He slipped through the cracks for decades. Between 1970 and 2005, Samuel Little murdered women across the United States, most of them poor, black, addicted, or forgotten by society. He confessed to 93 murders. So far, 50 have been confirmed. This is the story of how America's most prolific serial killer got away with it for more than 30 years. Samuel Little was born in 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia, and raised by his grandmother in Lorain, Ohio. From a young age, he had a long list of run-ins with the law, starting with theft, truancy, and assault. By the 1960s, he was drifting from state to state, racking up arrests for shoplifting, fraud, assault, and even attempted rape. But police viewed him as a small-time criminal, not someone dangerous. They were wrong. Little's victims were mostly marginalized women, Black, Latina, or Indigenous, often involved in sex work or battling addiction. Many lived on the edges of society, making them easy targets and unlikely to be reported missing. He later said, "They were women nobody cared about. I knew no one would look for them." He strangled his victims, often with his bare hands, and left their bodies in alleys, fields, or abandoned buildings. Most deaths were misclassified as drug overdoses, accidents, or simply undetermined. What made Little so hard to catch? He was a nomad. He crisscrossed the U.S. constantly. He used dozens of aliases, and he never used weapons that would leave a trace. The murders happened in different jurisdictions, with no DNA, no witnesses, and no one connecting the dots. From 1970 to 2005, he was arrested more than 100 times, yet never convicted of murder. It wasn't until 2012, when Little was arrested in Kentucky on a drug charge, that things began to unravel. His DNA was matched to 3 cold cases in Los Angeles, women found strangled between 1987 and 1989. In 2014, Samuel Little was convicted and sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. But no one knew just how deep his crimes went until he started talking. In prison, Samuel Little started confessing. At first, it seemed like a game, a way to pass the time. But then the numbers kept growing. 10 murders, then 25, then 50. By the time he was done, he had confessed to 93 murders, describing them in shocking detail. Little had an almost photographic memory. He remembered his victims' faces, the color of their clothing, the car he was driving, even what bars he picked them up from. He began drawing portraits of his victims, dozens of them, to help investigators identify the unknown. The FBI released these sketches publicly. One by one, cold case detectives began confirming his stories. Samuel Little's crimes exposed a brutal truth. Many of his victims were never taken seriously. Reports were dismissed. Cases went cold. Some families were even told their loved ones had overdosed, despite obvious signs of violence. Why? Because these women were poor, addicted, sex workers, women of color. The system ignored them, and Little knew it. He exploited not just people, but the biases of law enforcement. And it worked, for decades. The FBI has verified 50 of Little's murders, making him the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. The remaining confessions are still under review, and several cases remain unsolved. In 2019, the FBI called his case unprecedented. In total, his crimes spanned over 19 states, from California to Florida, and claimed victims from 1970 to 2005. Samuel Little died in prison on December 30, 2020, at the age of 80. He left behind a trail of devastation and a notebook full of faces that still haunt investigators. Some families never even knew their loved ones were murdered until decades later, when Little's confession reached them. Samuel Little didn't just murder people. He preyed on those society already discarded. His story is a tragedy of justice delayed, of invisible victims, and of a killer who understood exactly how to stay in the shadows. But now we see his crimes for what they are. Not isolated, not random, not unimportant. Every life he took mattered. If this story moved you, share it, so more of his victims can be recognized and remembered. Subscribe for more true crime stories that dig deeper than the headlines, and let us know in the comments. How can we make sure this never happens again?